everybody. I come from a newspaper background, and there's nothing newspapers or journalists like more than a Twitter spat. There's nothing better than a footballing Twitter spat. So I think before we get down to the business, you've been at the heart of a Twitter spat this week with one of your pundits, Robbie Savage and John Terry. What's BT Sport's take on it all?
Well, it's been good for us. It's nice to be talked about, and I know that Robbie was really pleased to be mentioned in a Champions League press conference for the first time. He's been...
After how many years? 25 years in football?
Exactly. But no, I think it's certainly what we all want as football fans and viewers of BT Sport, that these sorts of conversations are generated. I thought it was surprising that John chose that press conference to highlight Robbie Savage. It just sort of came out from nowhere, really. But I think what John has said really has sort of highlighted that maybe 98% of people who do football punditry can't talk about John Terry. So that's what he thinks. It's caused a debate. We have Flesh and Sav on Saturday morning. Please tune in. I'm sure Robbie's got a few things to talk about. Probably do some more analysis on John, and maybe because they actually played against each other, Robbie has the right to have an opinion as a pundit. It's what we pay him for. And if it causes good, strong debate, then we're going to support that. But I do feel sorry for probably 98% of other football pundits that maybe aren't or don't have the right to talk about John Terry.
Or the reaction in the press room was interesting as well. That they all seem to agree with John Terry. Take the easy line. Anyway, you've had a long career involved with broadcasting sport and football in particular. Mm-hmm. You've been with Sky twice. You've been with ESPN. Yeah. BT Sport, I think you're in your third season now. What have you brought from your last 20 years with Sky and ESPN into what you're doing now?
I think you've seen others come before us and maybe not be as successful as BT Sport right now. Obviously, Setanta and ESPN have given it a go head-to-head with Sky. I started at Sky back in 94, 95. I was a runner. Started off making cups of tea for Mr. Keys and Mr. Gray and some of the other people. And I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to become a director very, very early on in my career. My first sort of big game was a UEFA Cup game, Leeds versus PSV Eindhoven at 22 years of age, directing it. So I was lucky. Learned a lot at Sky, and had an opportunity to go to ESPN, two giants of sports TV. Both have huge pluses. Both love sport, and both have a real excitement and energy for what they're doing. They've also been lucky enough to have all the best rights, and BT's come along and managed to disrupt that, especially with Sky. Obviously, ESPN are actually part of our network now, and we really value all that brilliant American content that comes across. But no, we're in the market. We are competing with Sky. I think that when I was at Sky, there was a real drive to be the very best, and aggression to almost win at all costs, really. But they've now developed. They are one of the best broadcasters in the world. They're 25 years old now. 16 years I was there, so I don't think they need to have their chest out all the time. Certainly at ESPN, pretty similar in their wanting to be the very best. Their tagline was the world leader in sports broadcasting for many a year. Put those two together, and you've got a pretty good sports network. What we've tried to do at BT Sport is add a bit of warmth to how we broadcast. And if I look at the BBC, I always think whenever you're watching an Olympics or a World Cup or other major events, they certainly give you a warmth and a great sense of place. And if we take a bit of BBC, a bit of Sky, and a bit more of ESPN USA, I think that's where BT Sport has certainly tried to put itself.
This week it's about technology, and you were very much at the heart of innovation at Sky. I think you're behind a lot of the Monday Night Football innovations as they happened through the years in Sky. But you haven't necessarily gone down that road with BT Sport. Is that a conscious decision?
Yeah, it was. I think, again, other people who have picked up the football rights, they've tried to compete, go head-to-head with Sky, touch screens and other technology. It's very similar. We really opted not to do that from day one. Hopefully, lots of you have seen what we've done, but we built a rather big studio, and in that studio was a demonstration area. It's a glass floor that lights up with the various sporting lines from the fields of play, and we've used that really, a much more sort of human-driven, sort of, what our talent are used to, which is going on the training field and using demonstrations really to describe what happens on the field of play and why it happens. And our rugby coverage in particular has taken that to a really strong top level.
You're consciously being very physical in what you do, are you?
Yeah, I think when you launch with, we had obviously a Premier League pack or 2 Premier League packs when we launched, and really it was 1 game a week. So we've got 7 days to fill, and we did feel that we had to be more of a personality-led channel because we didn't have enough rights. Roll on 2 years and 3 months, we've got a lot of rights, including the Champions League exclusively, Europa League exclusively, and our schedule is completely transformed. But those first 2 years, we were very much driven by personality of our talent rather than the rights being on the channel.
You've mentioned talent a couple of times, and more that's becoming something very important for television, for live television and live sport. What sort of talent identification do you have? I mean, are you going out there and very deliberately pinpointing certain people for certain reasons?
Yeah, I think credibility is the most important thing. If you don't really have credibility, it's very difficult to...
Are you looking at their reach in terms of their social reach, their social media reach?
I mean, Rio Ferdinand will be talking here later, who's part of our team, a key member of what we do and where we think we're going to be. Rio has, a much wider reach than a number of players that maybe you could look at. His love for music, his love for fashion, the magazine. So he's talking to a much wider audience than, say, someone like Michael Owen, for example. And then Robbie Savage right now is doing pretty well. But also Jake Humphrey, Gary Lineker, Claire Balding, Brian O'Driscoll, again, who's talking later. We've tried to have people with more of a reach than just football or just the sports they are famous for.
This season now, your Champions League, you've invested heavily in the Champions League. What do you think is different about how you have decided to do Champions League versus what was happening with it in the past?
Well, I think it's the first time someone's had it exclusively, so we're able to have all the games. I think we are broadcasting it very well. Our viewing numbers are very good. I think we've managed to add a couple of things that have been a bit of a difference. Not always easy when someone like Sky has been leading the way in that area, but we have a goal show, which I'm sure we've all known Soccer Saturday for a long time. It's Soccer Saturday with goals, and that's gone down very well. As James Richardson presents that with...
And what's interesting about that is that you're not using footballers as your panellists.
Yeah, we've got a mix. We've got the Guardian audience, and then we maybe have a Sun audience. I mean, I think James Richardson really, his guests on that show are first and foremost very strong journalists. Their knowledge of European football is extensive, and some football players probably would not be able to answer something on Astana, for example. So we've opted to use the journalists on that particular show, and there definitely is a different audience for that show against our main Gary Lineker broadcast.
In Ireland, we still have access to a certain amount of live football, particularly with the Champions League on 2 different free-to-air channels. In the UK now, with the Champions League now, only the FA Cup is available to football fans in England on live television. It's moving more and more behind a paywall. Is that a sustainable model, do you think? Is that something that's going to continue down that road, or can you see any fractures in the future in it?
I think the rights have, they've escalated quite a lot over the last 25 years. And again, Sky have been driving that. BT are now part of that, and the sums of money. It's multi-millions. For Sky, it's billions.
So a Premier League game now is on Sky is what, 11 million per match?
I think it'll be 11.1 million for next season, and that's for them for the next 3 years.
And this has to be paid for eventually. And I mean, is it going to end up with the consumer, and will it be sustainable?
I mean, BT's drive here is all about broadband. We have used strong content to drive our broadband, and it's worked very well. The broadband numbers have been excellent. And also what is doing well is actually just channel numbers as well is doing very well. So people are actually just buying the channel as well as the broadband switch. So we're getting a good mix of everything. But I think as we look ahead for the next 3 or 4 years, I think we've got to look at the likes of Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all the other social platforms. They're using these rights to drive awareness, to drive hits, to drive impressions. I was at Leaders a few weeks ago, and Facebook did a big presentation, and I think the majority of the content was the Premier League. But Facebook obviously don't have those rights to the Premier League. So I think there will be a conversation, I'm sure, that the big players, YouTube, your Facebook, and Twitter, there's going to have to be some sort of discussion around how they can use those rights to generate clear revenue for them, because they haven't got the rights to those.
Yes, so like content owners, which is what you are now, you own the rights to this, and Sky obviously and other players around the world are investing such huge sums of money. Can you see a day where they're going to go back to the seller, in this case the Premier League, or if it's the NFL or whatever, and say, look, we've paid you this amount for this, you need to look at what's happening around the world and make decisions?
I think so. I think all the big organisations where social media is using these rights to drive numbers, it's going to have to be looked at, of course, yeah.
In terms of the content owners, a lot of content owners are now deciding to go into broadcasting themselves. So I was talking to George Warren yesterday, and they promote fights, but they also broadcast them with a separate arm of the company. Can you see that becoming more of a reality in TV, or do you think that the future is still going to be the big players like the BT Sports and the Skies and the ESPN?
Yeah, I think we're all in this world today with the iPad, the phone, the various gadgets we all carry around. This is the first screen now. I have no doubt. What we hold in our hand is our first screen. I think there's always going to be an audience for big TV sport. There's no doubt about that. But I think everything we're doing at BT Sport is driving you to the small screen first. We're calling that the first screen. The more people are engaging with short-form clip content, that then drives them to the bigger screen. This is what we are doing.
So you see a time when there's a more fluid relationship in terms of the various screen platforms that we can consume sport on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure there'll come a point where the small screen is multi-screen, and everything's on there just for one viewing experience. If we look at the generation that's coming through, the millennials, I don't think they're watching hour-and-a-half build-ups on the various networks. I really don't. I think they're getting into coming on for 7:44, a minute before kickoff, but they've consumed everything they need to know about the game or the event via their tablet or their phone, etc. So I think that's certainly how we're thinking as producers. Why save an interview for 7:37 with Mourinho? Let's get it out there. Let's get as many people to touch that interview, to listen to that interview as soon as possible, as soon as it's been cut. Which is, content drives everything. So that's what we're trying to do. But it's a big change. Producers who have been doing it for 30 years or 20 years, and they want to save this special piece for a small audience. We've got to change that around. And so at BT Sport, we're doing that. And a lot of our drive is video driven through our website and the app. And we're almost trying to create a build-up for you via those platforms, so you then join our main broadcast later.
There's a kind of a sense, isn't there, that sport and the consumption of sport, it's not that it's plateauing, it's continuing to grow and grow and grow on the levels of interest. And I know there's hype, and and that's something that Sky have traditionally done. They've gone for that hype approach, but it is something that is now transferring across all media, including into my own area in print. But the hype behind that hype is a level of interest that almost justifies it, isn't there? The people can't get enough sport at the moment. It just seems to be the great fantasy of our time in terms of escaping from reality almost.
Yeah, I think we all love sport. Well, sorry, not all of us, but sports fans clearly love sport, and I think it's the unique content we're after. I think, you know, you talked about Robbie Savage and Don Terry. You know, it made several national newspapers. Should it have made national newspaper coverage? The fact that John Terry has said he won't listen to Robbie Savage? I don't know. Probably shouldn't really, but he does. So yeah, people want to hear it, but we'll talk about it.
But the point is, it wouldn't make it if there wasn't an interest in it. So I mean, you know, editors aren't in the habit of putting stuff in that people don't want to read about. So, and it, you know, this one transcends Twitter almost, which is extraordinary.
No, it's good. No, we're pleased with it. We'll see what Robbie's going to say on Saturday.
Are you going to give us a preview?
I don't know if he's called, but he certainly. We'll have to chat later.
So in terms of innovation, you know, again, getting back to the point that we're at a technology conference, you're seeing, as for somebody who was a technological innovator, you now seem to have reached a fork in your own idea of innovation, and you're moving towards a different type of innovation in terms of how you're presenting your product to the viewer. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, definitely. I think you know, we have to, you know, BT's all about communicating, fibre. We've got to take coverage of sport to another level. We've talked about devices, we've talked about how people are consuming content and how we're curating that content for them. But ultimately, we want to make the picture quality, the sound quality, the best it can be. And I think our next move, and we've already started, we've been the first in Europe to launch Ultra HD, 4K, whichever one you want to go with.
And what's that experience going to be like for the viewer? The 4K experience.
The picture quality is amazing, absolutely amazing. I mean, 3D came and went really. I was actually in America when they launched 3D, and it didn't last very long. Obviously, other broadcasters have tried it. I don't think people want to sit at home with glasses on. So, 4K or Ultra HD is a fantastic viewing experience. The picture quality is 4 times what HD is, and the definition of picture is simply incredible. And I think the sooner we all get to broadcasting in Ultra HD, I think everyone will be very, very pleased with what they'll be watching.
And what about the idea of the stadium experience in your home and the virtual reality experience? Where are you on that?
Yeah, I was again at Leaders. Facebook were showing a particular set of glasses. I think in collaboration with Microsoft. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the sit at home with a massive big headset on. Maybe there's a generation that want to do that. Hopefully, you know, for us, the live content will drive. But the experience of putting this headset on and putting yourself into the stadium, if you're not there, it's definitely got some potential. Yeah, I wonder what those rights will be called. Whoever can make that decision. I don't know what you'd call those rights.
I know in America they're moving close to having a technology where you can actually be in the end zone during a game, or you can be on the sideline, or for a boxing fight you can be in the corner.
That's right.
You think we're a bit away from that here, do you think, or is it just around the corner?
No, I don't think it's around the corner, but I think in the next 2 to 3 years, that experience will be available. You know, it was demonstrated a few weeks ago, and if the broadcasters and the rights can allow for those positions and those cameras to be put there and the technology to be installed, then you know that out of stadium experience, which puts you in the stadium, could be another level of how you would view a game or an event.
We're out of time, so just a final thought. You've gone up against Sky, and it's not necessarily Sky versus BT. It's not all about that, but I'm assuming that's a lot of it. Yeah. You're here to stay, obviously. You're in it for the long run. I mean, you've got a business outside of TV, so you've got broadband, etc. So.
No, it's a drive for broadband, drive for fibre. As I say, we're going to progress into the ultra high definition world. We're leading that at the moment. No, we've made some big investments. You know, we spent a lot of money on football rights, rugby rights, MotoGP rights, UFC, a whole number of women's sports in football and tennis, women's tennis. So, yeah, we've gone from 3 channels to 7. So, I think the strategy is clear. We are here to stay, and you know, more and more people that enjoy BT Sport, better for all of us.
Okay, on that note, Grant Best, thanks very much.
Thank you.